Once upon a time, in the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, there lived a little girl named Amara. Amara was only 6 years old, but she was known all over her neighborhood for being a very special girl. She lived in a big, beautiful house, with gardens filled with the brightest flowers and the juiciest fruits anyone had ever tasted. Amara had everything a little girl could wish for: dolls from all over the world, bicycles in different colors, and even her own little playground. Her parents loved her very much and made sure she had the best of everything. But Amara had a secret that made her very different from other children her age. Despite having so many toys and games, Amara loved to take things that were not hers. It didn't matter if it was something small like a shiny wrapper or something bigger, like a pretty bracelet from a store. If Amara saw something she liked, she would take it when nobody was looking. One sunny afternoon, Amara went to the market with her mother. The market was always busy with people buying and selling all sorts of things. As they walked past the stores, Amara's eyes caught a glimpse of a sparkling ring on one of the tables. It was just lying there, glittering under the sunlight. Amara looked around and noticed that the seller was busy talking to another customer. Without thinking twice, she reached out quickly and slipped the ring into her pocket. When they got home, Amara ran to her room and closed the door. She took the ring out of her pocket and admired how it sparkled in her hand. She knew it was wrong to take something that didn't belong to her, but the thrill of taking it was too exciting to resist. That night, as Amara lay in bed, she heard a gentle knock on her door. It was her mother. "Amara," her mother said softly, "I need to talk to you about something important." Amara sat up in bed, her heart starting to beat a little faster. Did her mother know about the ring? Her mother sat beside her on the bed and held her hand. "Amara, the market seller came by today. She was very upset because a special ring she brought for her daughter was missing. She thinks it might have been taken by someone at the market." Amara's cheeks turned red, and she looked down at her hands. She felt a heavy feeling in her chest. She knew she should tell her mother the truth, but she was afraid of getting in trouble. "Mommy, Amara started, but her words trailed off. She couldn't bring herself to say more. Her mother hugged her tightly. "Amara, it's important to be honest and to respect other people's things. If you know anything about the ring, it's better to tell the truth." Amara nodded slowly. She knew her mother was right. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the ring from her pocket and handed it to her mother. "I took it, Mommy." "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her mother looked at her, surprised but also relieved that Amara had decided to tell the truth. "Thank you for being honest, Amara. Tomorrow, we will go together and return the ring to the seller. It's never too late to make things right." That night, Amara learned a valuable lesson. She promised herself to try not to take things that weren't hers. The next morning, Amara woke up early, feeling a mix of nervousness and relief. Today, she would return the ring to the market seller, and she hoped that would make her feel better about what she had done. Her mother had already arranged everything, and they planned to go to the market after breakfast. As they walked through the bustling market, Amara clutched her mother's hand tightly. The sounds of the market were louder than she remembered, or maybe it was just her guilt making everything seem more intense. They finally reached the store where the upset seller had her goods laid out, still sparkling under the morning sun. The seller looked up as they approached, her expression a mix of hope and worry. Amara's mother spoke softly, explaining that Amara had something to say. With a gentle nudge, Amara stepped forward. "I'm sorry I took your ring," Amara said, her voice barely above a whisper. She held out the ring, and the seller took it, her face softening. "Thank you for bringing it back, little." "Thank you for bringing it back, little one," the seller said, her voice kinder than Amara had expected. "It means a lot to me and my daughter." Amara nodded, feeling the weight lift off her chest a little. They talked a bit more, and the seller even gave Amara a small smile before they said goodbye. As they turned to leave, Amara felt her mother's hand squeeze hers a bit tighter, a silent message of pride. Just as they were about to leave the market, Amara's mother spotted an old friend at another store. "Just a moment, Amara," her mother said, leading her towards the store. "Let me say hello to Mrs. Adeola." Amara followed her mother, but as they reached Mrs. Adeola's store, something else caught her eye. It was a necklace, not just any necklace but one with a shimmering pendant that seemed to dance with colors in the light. It was hanging just at the edge of the store, almost calling out to her. Mrs. Adeola and her mother started chatting, laughing over old times, and slowly, Amara edged closer to the necklace. She knew she shouldn't even think about taking it, especially after what had just happened with the ring. But the necklace was so beautiful, more beautiful than anything she had at home. She looked around, her mother was still talking, completely absorbed in conversation. Amara reached out, her hand shaking a little. Just as her fingers brushed against the cool metal of the necklace, a voice inside her whispered, "Stop." She paused, her heart pounding, but the whisper was drowned out by a louder voice, an irresistible urge. Before she knew what was happening, her fingers closed around the necklace, and she tucked it into her pocket. "Amara, are you ready to go?" her mother called, not noticing the quick, guilty movement. "Yes, Mommy," Amara replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. As they walked home, Amara felt the necklace in her pocket with each step. The guilt was there, heavier this time, but so was the thrill, the dangerous thrill that made her feel alive and powerful. That night, Amara lay in her bed, the stolen necklace under her pillow. She knew she had made another mistake, a big one. But how could something that felt so thrilling be so wrong? Everything in Amara's life seemed to return to normal after the incident at the market. Days filled with school and play passed without much event, and the stolen necklace remained hidden away, almost forgotten under Amara's pillow. But the truth has a way of revealing itself at the least expected moments. One bright Monday morning, as the sun peeked through her bedroom curtains, Amara was humming a tune while she dressed for school. She was in a cheerful mood, excited about showing her new project on Nigerian wildlife to her class. As she pulled out her school uniform, the sparkling necklace fell out from its hiding spot. The colors caught the morning light, casting playful rainbows across her room. Without thinking much about its origins, Amara, drawn by its beauty, decided to wear it. She clasped the necklace around her neck, admiring how it looked in the mirror. It made her feel like a princess ready to grace the world with her presence. Satisfied with her reflection, she headed to the kitchen for breakfast. Her mother was there, preparing her lunchbox. As Amara entered the room, her mother turned to compliment her on how neatly she was dressed for school. But her words halted mid-sentence when her eyes landed on the shimmering pendant around Amara's neck. "Amara, that's a beautiful necklace," her mother said, her voice tinged with curiosity and concern. "Where did you get it? I don't remember buying that for you." Amara's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't thought her mother would notice the necklace so quickly, nor did she prepare an explanation. In a rush of panic and the fear of disappointing her mother again, she blurted out, It was a gift, Mommy. From my friend Anita at school. She gave it to me for my birthday." Her mother paused, looking at her thoughtfully. "I see," she said slowly. "It's just that it looks a lot like one I saw at Mrs. Adeola's shop the last time we were there." Amara felt a knot form in her stomach. She knew she should come clean, but the fear of losing her mother's trust again held her back. "No, Mommy, it's from Anita," she insisted, hoping her mother would leave it at that. Her mother nodded, though her eyes still held a flicker of doubt. "All right, honey. Well, it's very pretty. Make sure you thank Anita again for such a thoughtful gift." The rest of the breakfast was quieter than usual. Amara ate her food, feeling the heavy gaze of her mother from time to time. The joy of wearing the necklace had vanished, replaced by a growing unease about her lie. As the day went on, the weight of the necklace around her neck felt heavier with each hour. At school, she couldn't focus on her lessons or even enjoy showing her project, which she had worked so hard on. The lie gnawed at her, and the stolen necklace felt like a chain of guilt. After school, as she walked home, Amara made a decision. She couldn't bear the heavy feeling anymore. When she reached her house, she found her mother in the garden. Taking a deep breath, Amara approached her. "Mommy," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something." Her mother looked up, setting aside the gardening tools. "What is it, Amara?" "The necklace," Amara confessed, tears starting to well up in her eyes. "I didn't get it from Anita. I took it from Mrs. Adiala's shop that day when you were talking to her." "I'm sorry, Mommy. I don't know why I keep doing this." Her mother's face was a mix of sadness and concern. She opened her arms, and Amara ran into them, crying. "Thank you for telling me the truth, Amara. I know it's hard, but it's important. We need to return the necklace, and we need to talk about why you feel the need to take things that aren't yours. We'll figure this out together." That evening, they talked a lot about what was going on with Amara. Her mother listened patiently as Amara tried to express feelings she didn't fully understand herself. Together, they decided to seek help. Maybe a counselor could help Amara understand her impulses better. As the day dawned to seek help for Amara, her mother was in a flurry of activity, trying to ensure everything was ready. In the rush of preparing, she forgot the most crucial item to return, the stolen necklace, which still adorned Amara's neck. Together, they hurried out the door, the necklace an unintended companion on a journey meant for healing. The air was crisp and the streets busy as they made their way to the counselor's office. Lagos was always alive with energy, but today the hustle felt overwhelming to Amara, who was already anxious about discussing her problems with someone new. Halfway to their destination, her mother suggested they stop at the market to pick up some items for dinner. The market was as vibrant and chaotic as ever, with vendors calling out their wares and customers haggling over prices. The last thing Amara expected was to run into Mrs. Odeola, the owner of the stolen necklace. As fate would have it, just as they were passing a row of stalls, there stood Mrs. Odeola, arranging her jewelry display. Her eyes widened as she spotted the familiar necklace gleaming around Amara's neck. Her friendly demeanor changed instantly, her face hardening as she marched over to them. "Is that not my necklace?" Mrs. Adeola exclaimed, her voice sharp, loud enough to draw the attention of those nearby. "The one that went missing from my shop." Amara's mother was taken aback, suddenly realizing the oversight. "Odeola, I'm so sorry, we were actually on our way," but Mrs. Odeola was not in a forgiving mood. "On your way? Wearing my stolen property," she interrupted, her voice rising with every word. The gathered crowd began to murmur, their eyes fixed on Amara and her mother. Feeling the piercing stares and hearing the whispers, Amara's heart sank. Tears welled up in her eyes as the shame and reality of her actions hit her harder than ever before. Her mother tried to calm Mrs. Odeola, explaining the situation and the intention to return the necklace, but Mrs. Odeola was too angry to listen. "You should have thought about that before taking something that wasn't yours," Mrs. Odeola shouted, her words echoing through the market. Amara couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She cried openly, the weight of embarrassment and guilt crushing her. The stares felt like daggers, and the murmurs were like a chorus of judgment. In that moment, Amara hated herself more than she ever had. She hated the impulse that drove her to take things, hated the trouble it caused, hated the pain it brought to her mother. Amara's mother, despite the chaos, wrapped her arms around her daughter, shielding her from the worst of the stares. "Let's go, Amara. We'll sort this out, but not here, she said, her voice calm but firm. They walked away from the crowd, from Mrs. Adela's angry shouts, and from the judgmental eyes of the market-goers. Though they left the scene, the echo of the incident followed them. Once they reached a quieter street, Amara's mother knelt down to look her in the eyes. Amara, we made a mistake today, and it's clear now more than ever that we need help. Not just for the stealing but for everything that comes with it, the hurt, the shame, and the consequences, she said gently. Amara nodded, wiping her tears. I don't want to ever feel this way again, Mommy. And you won't, my dear. We'll get the help we need, and we'll make things right, starting with returning this necklace and apologizing properly to Mrs. Odeola. But first, let's talk to the counselor and find out how we can help you overcome this. With new resolve and the painful lessons of the day etching a deep impression, they continued their journey, not just to the counselor's office but towards a path of healing and understanding. After their painful encounter at the market, Amara and her mother made their way to the counselor's office. The atmosphere was somber, both reflecting on the incident. Amara felt a hollow ache in her chest, a mix of regret and a deep desire to change her ways. Her mother, quiet and thoughtful, seemed to be planning the best words to explain everything to the counselor. They arrived at a small, welcoming building with a sign that read Holistic Counseling Services. Inside, the waiting room was peaceful, with soft music playing and plants placed around cheerfully. Amara felt a slight ease in the tension she had carried all day. Her mother checked them in, and soon they were called into a cozy office where a kind-looking woman greeted them with a warm smile. Hello, Amara, Mrs. Choku, the counselor said, her voice gentle. My name is Mrs. Ngozi. Please, tell me what brings you here today. Amara's mother began, recounting not only today's events but the ongoing issue of Amara stealing. Mrs. Ngozi listened intently, nodding from time to time, her expression one of understanding and compassion. When it was Amara's turn to speak, the words stumbled out in a rush of emotion. I don't know why I do it, Amara admitted, her voice shaky. It's like I see something, and I just want to have it. But I don't want to feel this way anymore, especially after today. Mrs. Ngozi nodded. Amara, it's very brave of you to want to change, and admitting you need help is the first step. Sometimes, we do things because there are feelings or needs inside us that we don't know how to deal with. Together, we can explore what might be causing you to act this way and find better ways to handle those feelings. The session continued with discussions about feelings, responsibility, and making amends. Mrs. Ngozi introduced the concept of impulse control techniques and suggested some strategies for Amara to use when she felt the urge to take something. Before they left, Mrs. Ngozi gave Amara a small notebook. This is for you, Amara, she said. Whenever you feel the urge to take something, or if you ever feel overwhelmed, write it down. Sometimes, putting our thoughts on paper can help us manage them better. Amara held the notebook tightly, a small beacon of hope. They scheduled regular appointments, and with a new sense of purpose, Amara and her mother left the office. As they walked back towards the market to return the necklace, the weight of the day's earlier embarrassment still lingered. But alongside it, there was a newfound determination in Amara. She was beginning to understand her actions, and more importantly, she was learning ways to change them. They reached Mrs. Adeola's store, and Amara's heart pounded with anxiety. Mrs. Adeola looked up, surprise and weariness on her face as she saw them approach. Mrs. Adeola, I'm so sorry for what happened earlier, Amara started, her voice trembling but clear. I took this from your shop, and I shouldn't have. I want to return it and apologize for stealing and lying. Mrs. Adeola listened, her expression softening. Amara, it hurt me to see you do this, especially as your mother and I are friends. But seeing you come back here like this, I appreciate your courage. Amora's mother added her own apologies and thanks for Mrs. Adeola's understanding. The air cleared as Mrs. Adeola accepted the necklace and the apologies, her demeanor easing into a reluctant smile. "Thank you for bringing it back, Amara. I hope you've learned something from all this," she said. "I have, Mrs. Adeola. And I'm getting help so it won't happen again," Amara replied, a sincere promise. As they left the market, the air between mother and daughter was lighter, and Amara felt a cautious optimism. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with support, she believed she could overcome her impulses. Their journey home was quiet, each lost in their thoughts about the day's lessons and the future. Amara wrote in her new notebook, her pen firm and her resolve stronger than before. Amara's journey to making amends began earnestly after her visit to Mrs. Adeola. Empowered by her resolve and the strategies she learned from Mrs. Ngozi, Amara decided it was time to return all the other items she had taken without permission. Together with her mother, they made a list of all the things she remembered taking and planned a day to visit each person affected. One by one, Amara returned the items. There was the colorful pen she had taken from her classmates, the storybook from her cousin, and a pretty hairpin from a neighbor's open garage. With each return, Amara felt a bit lighter, though each apology was harder than the last. She worried about angry reactions, but her fears were met with unexpected kindness and forgiveness. Her classmate hugged her and thanked her for returning the pen. Her cousin was surprised but glad to have her favorite storybook back. The neighbor, touched by Amara's honesty, simply smiled and advised her to always think of others' feelings. With each encounter, Amara learned the relief of resolving her mistakes, and the responses she received helped rebuild the trust she had damaged. Finally, after returning the last of the stolen items, Amara and her mother sat down at their favorite park. They watched the sunset, a beautiful end to a challenging but fulfilling day. Amara felt a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She was learning to manage her impulses, and she was repairing the relationships she had harmed. "Mommy," Amara said as they sat on a bench, looking at the changing colors of the sky, "I feel so different now, like I've been carrying a heavy bag and I just put it down." Her mother smiled, putting an arm around her. "I'm proud of you, Amara. It took a lot of courage to do what you did today." Amara nodded, thinking. Then, she took out her little notebook and wrote something down. She read it aloud. "It's never too late to return what isn't yours, and honesty is the first step to mending a mistake." "That's my quote, Mommy. I want to remember this feeling and this day." Her mother hugged her tighter. "That's a beautiful quote, Amara. And a very important lesson." As they walked home, the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky, Amara felt a sense of hope and purpose. She knew her journey wasn't over, there would be challenges ahead, but she now had the tools and the support to face them. Moral of the story: even when the truth is hard to share, honesty brings the relief of righting wrongs and the chance to mend what was broken. Like Amara, we can all learn that our actions affect others, but through courage and sincerity, we can make amends and restore trust. Always remember, it's never too late to correct a mistake.